spraying up their chemicals into the air. None of the media is covering it. It's like there's a gag order on it.
I think of reality as being the thing that exists whether we're here or not, whether we believe in it or not.
The problem is that it's hard for us to determine exactly what is real.
When we think about the social context, I think it is really difficult for us to be objective because we have social motives and motives to think about ourselves as being good and valuable and all these different motivations. They are very strong and powerful, and they often override our desire to be, objective or to see the truth.
I'm not sure that we can ever know objective reality, which is why we come to different conclusions about what is and isn't real.
Most of reality is socially shared and constructed, and it emerges through conversation and interactions. And so it's not as easy for us to understand beyond our immediate sensory capabilities.
Everybody struggles with the idea of wanting to believe that there's an objective truth, and the fact that we can't just know it off the bat, even through empirical work or through reason, has led some people to question whether reality exists or whether objectivity exists. That doesn't mean that scientific knowledge isn't good or that it's not better than any other way of knowing reality. It just means that it's the best tool that we've got, but it's always incomplete.
The idea to quickly come to an answer of things and to have it stable and not be falsifiable is very conducive for believing in a conspiracy theory, because the conspiracy theory quickly gives you the answer and is also not falsifiable, but it comes on the cost of being accurate.
A scientist is supposed to start with the data and then figure out what's true and come up with a hypothesis, with a theory to explain it. An ideologue already knows what he or she wants to be true and then goes out and gathers evidence in favor of it.
Some of these communities think they can use scientific methods to verify their conspiracy theory beliefs. But if you actually look carefully at how these scientific methods are being used, for example, in the flat earth community, they're very much unlike how I was trained to do science and how we train PhD students nowadays to do science, which is that they should be trying to falsify their belief systems. What happens in the flat earth community is they run experiments, but when the data doesn't come out, they just dismiss it and start with a fresh new experiment.
Now, all of a sudden, in our current era, when everything is politicized, including science, because people make it political, then all of a sudden they lose their trust in scientists.
The place we've seen this most notably is on climate.
Climate change is already causing devastating problems in our country and around the world.
A huge portion of the electorate, because of a sustained campaign of disinformation, largely funded by fossil fuel companies and ideological interests, it's not just that they reject climate science, it's just like they reject the scientists, right? The entire thing is sort of a hoax.
Climate change is a hoax.
People are having debates about these factual matters because they're motivated by their politics. And it's called motivated reasoning. They want it to be true. And when you want something to be true, maybe you're more likely to interpret the data in a way that's favorable to what you want. Maybe you're also motivated now to go out there and gather data, cherry-pick data, to show that what you're saying is true. And I think there's an insidious relationship here.
They're not simple, elegant things. They are incredibly complex. And part of that complexity allows people to see connections that don't otherwise exist, and for it to be hard to debunk it. Because even if you debunk one chain in the conspiracy theory, people will say, well, 99 other connections still exist, and so they'll still hold on to the belief system. We have needs to just understand things, even if we can't control them. These are called epistemic needs. These are just some of the needs that guide us to believe things, and all of them can be fulfilled by certain types of theories or belief systems, even ones that aren't grounded in reality. And this is where conspiracy theories come in. They give us a sense of distinctiveness. If you believe in something that is outside of the mainstream, it allows you to feel a little bit different, a little bit like a special snowflake. And if you belong to a community that shares that belief, now you're part of a group that feels a sense of belonging and distinctiveness. You're part of a special group.
There are a lot of studies showing that people who feel out of control or are reminded of a situation in which they didn't really have a lot of control over tend to intensify their beliefs in conspiracy theories.
It turns out that it's like a signal that sends a message out to other like-minded people to connect to you. Conspiracy theories were kind of underground. You could find them on kind of, crackpot magazines, and then the internet happened. And then you could find them on kind of dark corners of the internet, but you had to look for it. Now, with the growth of things like social media and leaders who are perpetuating and spreading these things, and they have large platforms and big megaphones because they have millions of followers, you have the rapid spread of these conspiracy theories. People have easier access to them, and there seems to be less trust in science and the media than there used to be. And people have basically burrowed into certain echo chambers and communities that allow them to sustain these beliefs. And so the post-truth era is partly a problem of the fact that people have access to this and can share their beliefs.
Post-truth is the political subordination of reality. It's when you're dominating somebody else's reality. You're not trying to convince them, you're just telling them what's true because you're powerful enough to do it.
People identify with political parties because they share their values. In psychology, we call this affinities. They're attracted to certain parties because those parties align with their values. Those parties might preserve traditional values, and that attracts them, or might push for progress in ways that attract them. And once they join those parties and start to identify with them, they start to automatically trust anybody else who's a member of that party. Now, the problem is that trust can be abused in deep and dangerous ways. If people are blindly trusting leaders in their parties, they might put down their skepticism and trust those individuals. And that means that if those individuals are pushing false beliefs, fake news, propaganda, or conspiracy theories, they can be led down a very dark pathway. If those conspiracy theories also involve distrusting third-party information sources like the mainstream media, institutions that are normally the sources where we evaluate things good and bad and provide trustworthy information. If you cut people off from those things so that they're now just listening to a leader and they don't have any reasonable sources they can go to fact check those things because they don't trust them, that is a really dangerous situation.
We're always a little bit suspicious. I mean, there were so many wars, based on a conspiracy against a certain group. We know that Russia was involved in the elections. We know about the horrific Tuskegee experiments. We have a lot of incidences that we can recall where actually there was a powerful group conspiring against us.
But when we're talking about conspiracy theories that affect vaccination rates, we're talking about real people getting sick and dying. We're talking about kids who are too vulnerable to benefit from the vaccinations themselves, no longer benefit from herd immunity. And so you're actually harming the most vulnerable segments of society without the power to protect themselves.
People are very receptive to these ideas. And once people entertain a conspiracy theory, it is really hard to undo it.
When you start talking about deep state conspiracy theories or QAnon, theories like that, what you're doing is eroding trust in institutions. And that also has a huge risk for people harming themselves because they're now operating outside the trust of institutions we've built to promote the benefit of the common good. And then finally, if you have people who are mentally unwell, who are followers of leaders who are purporting and pushing conspiracy theories, they might take it upon themselves to harm other people. And you've seen this in the United States with people sending bombs in the mail to leaders they thought were behind certain conspiracy theories. And so what you have is the source of enormous amount of conflict and damage towards innocent people if leaders continue to push and perpetuate these belief systems. I think we're in a really dangerous time.